my dear Bagginses and Boffins.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Today, we are talking about something I didn't even know was happening. Amazon's Rings of Power presentation leaves Tolkien experts stunned. So, apparently, Amazon Studios flew in a bunch of Tolkien experts and influencers and showed them some footage, I guess more than the trailer that we've seen. And here are their thoughts. I didn't know this was happening. This is not even that big a news. Like no one was really talking about it. So yeah, they threw in 30-ish high profile Tolkien influencers. We were not invited, so we're not part of this group. But yeah, I guess they flew them in, showed them some footage, and allowed them to do some reaction to it. Like obviously, none of these people have been talking about it very much. Otherwise, this would be much bigger information. So yeah, they watched around 20 minutes of footage. And so some of the reactions seem positive. So Justin from the OneRing.net, they explained that the video or the footage they saw didn't look as much like a video game, where the trailer does kind of almost get to that line of video game fakery. And he said that it's a lot more in line with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, and not even that much like the later Hobbit trilogy, which is good. I obviously prefer the original trilogy. For years and years, I've actually hated the Hobbit trilogy, to be honest with maybe I haven't been that forward with you. I have since come around to what the Hobbit trilogy does offer, but I still prefer the original.
I don't mind it, but every time I put it on, I could watch Lord of the Rings instead.
Well, to me, I hated certain elements, and I still don't like the elements that I hated, and they still do detract a bit. I'm not saying it's the best film ever, but I can at least understand the style that Jackson was going for, knowing that it was a more of a kid's book, more of a story. And I think I've explained this to you, but I chalk this up to when we watch The Hobbit, we're actually watching the movie of someone who is writing this down later and embellishing certain aspects of it.
Yes.
And that would be Bilbo. So Bilbo embellishes his adventure in The Hobbit. And then when we get to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, that is a combination of Frodo and Sam. And together, they try to be a bit more realistic, not realizing that Bilbo was embellishing. And that's sort of how I bridge the two trilogies. And to me, it makes The Hobbit better. So I'm happy to think this way for myself. Obviously, not everyone has to do it, but it helps me enjoy The Hobbit more. Because if you're just comparing, like you were saying, you'd rather watch the Lord of the Rings original trilogy. The Hobbit, when you put it on, you're gonna be like, yeah, I could be watching the real deal, not this. So I do it as a way of saying like, no, it's a continuously flowing story that has different storytellers.
Yeah.
Sort of like how this is a weird segue, but like Harry Potter has different directors, and you can kind of tell. It looks different as it progresses. Yeah, so these people all sort of seemed to be somewhat positive about the experience.
Yeah, abated some of their fears from seeing the trailer.
So, like for example, Sean Gunner explains that while the storylines are not based on Tolkien's writings, because we know that they're not allowed to, but the show did have some level of craftsmanship and attention to detail that Jackson would have done, and that Tolkien would be proud of, I guess, is the idea. So to me, that's good. I think when you're doing something like that, I mean, it always shocks me how intense Peter Jackson was about the creation of just everything, from the different armor on the goblins, orcs, and urukai, to getting certain looks just right for characters, continuity wise, trying to get everything to fit right, and just really focusing in. And even the fact that no one else can see his vision when he is telling them to blow up, make bigger the Witch King's mace, and everyone's laughing at him. It's like, this is way too big. It makes no sense. But Peter Jackson was like, through video it will work. Like, when you see it on the screen, it's gonna work in content, and like no one else could see it but him. It's that kind of stuff where he could have just gone with the original one they gave him, which was a big mace, but he was like, no, it has to be like, I have this look in my mind of what this is going to look like, and it's going to work on the screen, and it does.
No, it works very well.
Yeah, like it.
And I mean, the actress who plays Eowyn has a great reaction to seeing the thing.
Because it does look intimidating. It does not look silly. Like, and that's the thing, is like all the production people thought it would look silly, and it would just be a joke. But when you see it on the screen, and just knowing the limited knowledge you have when you're watching these films about what the Witch King of Angmar is, it is a very intimidating spectacle. And like, you feel that thing hitting her shield and like hitting the ground as she dodges out of the way. Anyway, a great idea from Peter Jackson that nobody else on set would have had. Everyone would have just gone with a big mace that would have, I guess in hindsight, looked quite small.
Right. And it's like a quintessential like boss fight scene on a video game too. It's
exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly. And it allows them, I mean, I'm not sure if this is what allowed them to, because it seems like they were going to go through with this anyway, but it did give you that moment, so you didn't need Aragorn to fight someone at the Black Gates, which was the initial idea, right? Aragorn was going to fight the embodiment of Sauron or something like that, and that made no sense. So they switched out to be like a troll. But we didn't need a big epic battle there. We already had an epic battle. So now we were just kind of getting to that final moment that has, one of the best, there's a whole, I always want to do this. We keep forgetting. I want to go through the best speeches in Lord of the Rings. Because they're the ones that, I guess, stay with me. Anyway, back to these guys. They also got to meet the showrunners, and I guess I got to have a conversation and talk to them a little bit. And apparently, the showrunners, who, while they're not as experienced as some other writers in the business, they do seem to have a deep knowledge of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's writings, although again, they can't use it, and this is the problem.
That's the challenge. Yes, I mean, they could be great, but they have a real task on their hands.
Yeah, like, because here's the thing, they could have a photographic memory and have every line memorized from Tolkien's entire work, including Beowulf. But they can't use it. They can only use the appendices and some of the songs and stories we hear from other characters throughout Lord of the Rings. That's it. So they need to be able to not only have the knowledge, but also have the creativity to bridge the limited stuff that they have access to with the tone of Tolkien, and then film it in a way that is Peter Jackson-esque. That is a huge ask. And so that is why we are starting to get a little bit nervous, because the more and more we hear about what they truly have access to, it just seems it's getting harder and harder to just visualize how people could do this. Now, if they pull it off, That's awesome. That's fantastic. Good for them. It seems very. It seems like it's going to be less likely that it's going to live up to our really lofty expectations, and maybe that's on us. Maybe we are expecting too much. I mean, Peter Jackson put the bar really high. I'm now just hoping they get close. I'm hoping that, like, my best case scenario is essentially it kind of feels like early season Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's fun and I can get into it, even though at that time I wasn't a big Lord of the Rings guy or a big Game of Thrones guy. So I was just enjoying the moment. I'm hoping they can get that feeling for me.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be super crazy. Just get characters that make sense and are fun within the limited background that you're going to give us, because obviously they can't give us the full backgrounds from Tolkien's writings, because that's not allowed. So whatever the backgrounds they give us, I'm just hoping it's fleshed out enough and it's fun and we go with it, and we know that it leads into The Hobbit, which leads into the real movie, the original trilogy. That's my hope. But it does seem like a lot of these people did come out of this saying that the show is in good hands. It looks like it is actually more in line with a live action movie that Peter Jackson made than the video games CGI stuff we saw. So all that good news. Now, how much of it is true? I don't know. Maybe you had to kind of pass a test and be like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything negative, and then you were allowed in. But yeah, so it does seem like these people were all.
They should just leak this, so we can all see what they saw.
They should, like, literally, Amazon should leak it, because right now, you and I and a handful of other people, I mean, maybe me more than you at this point, but we're trying to be optimistic.
No, I'm optimistic.
But we have nothing to go on. You gave us one trailer, which was kind of meh, and then you gave us this other weird trailer in another language that we talked about. And that's it. We have random posters, which don't look anything like Peter Jackson. So, for those of us that were like hoping to just be able to immediately jump in and say, boom, we know what that is. We don't. We're going to have to learn as we go and say, oh, that is this sword. And oh, that's this. Like, we're going to have to just relearn everything, which I'm willing to do. But then we see the trailer that kind of looks hokey, and now we're told you don't have access to any of the writing. So you're not even making a true Tolkien thing.
That's the part that scares me.
Yeah. For me, it's a combination of them all, but you're right. The writing, the fact that they can't use the works that they need that are set in the time period they're doing the show in, that is really troubling. And so, yeah, if you drop a 20-minute, like, don't even tell anyone. Just have some random person tweet it out. 20-minute footage, random scenes. Like, people would go ecstatic for that. It would hype this thing up so much, especially if it's as good as these people say it is. So,
yeah,
just putting that out there. But maybe they're not doing it because it's not as good as they say it is. That's my worry. So yeah, I guess that kind of wraps up this one. Let us know where you guys stand. Do you guys trust these Tolkien experts and influencers? I know people in this space have come under fire recently. Like, this space is getting really divided. You're either in favor of the show or against it, essentially, and we're here trying to like toe the line between both kind of ripping on some of the aspects but also being open-minded. It's difficult. It's a lot harder than I imagined when we started this project up. I thought we're gonna just have all these fun people that are all happy about Lord of the Rings, but no, it's become a very divisive setting right now. But I'm hoping the show can turn that around. And we're gonna have to wait and see at this point.
I regret to announce this is the end. bid you all a very fond farewell.